Next up, we have Joellen Lampman here to talk about stingers and biters, reducing ticks, mosquitoes, and yellow jackets around the home. Joellen Lampman is a community IPM extension support specialist with the Cornell IPM program. With a bachelor's in natural resources from Cornell and a recent master's degree in science communication from Stony Brook University, Joellen is a lifelong environmental educator. At Cornell IPM, she utilizes the clear knowledge-based decision-making process of IPM to teach ecology and make a difference one property at a time. So,
thank you. All right. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. When Matt gave me my subject and he's like, oh, can you talk about this and this and this? And I feel like I just got the leftovers, but that's okay. We will make this work. So stingers and biters and suckers, oh my. So really we're talking about those medically important pests around your yard. And I'm less going to focus on the perimeter ones that are coming inside, though we'll touch on that. Talking about what's going on once you walk out your back door. So why are they there? Why do the pests show up? They show up because we are providing them with what they need, with food, with water, with shelter, and with space. So when we're trying to figure out how we're going to deal with these pests, we want to keep these 4 needs in mind and address those. So we have we're going to get into how we're going to figure out what we have, and then we're going to figure out what to do. So you've had a few introductions to integrated pest management and different ways of looking at that decision-making tree. This is my favorite way of looking at it, and this is the Swiss cheese model of integrated pest management. And what I feel this really demonstrates is there is no one thing that you can do that is going to solve all of your problems. If you think of each of those, do you need me to advance? That's all right. If you think of each of those slices of Swiss cheese as a strategy of trying to deal with the pest, they're all going to be somewhat successful and they're all going to fail in some manner. So if we layer up different strategies, they will all be successful in different ways, and they will also fail in different ways, and we can fill in those gaps. So when I'm talking about some of these strategies, nobody's going to do all of them. But the more that you do, the more protected you are going to be from either these medically important pests or whatever pests we've been talking about today. So here we go. Step number 1 is figuring out what we have. And we can do that by going out and actually looking for the problems that we have there. Although for a lot of these medically important pests, they come and find us. They can become pretty obvious to us. So once we do see these things out there, we have to figure out, is this actually a problem or is it not? So here's an example. Is this a problem or is this not a problem? This is a very personal decision. Do you recognize this, Betsy? This was outside Betsy's house. I love snakes. I will absolutely admit it. This guy is smiling at us, and he's eating mice out there. So I don't think that this is a pest. Now, my mother-in-law, on the other hand, I can hear the scream from 30 miles away. It's definitely a pest for her. Right. Other than that, how about this? Is this a pest? When I was a kid, raccoons were my absolute favorite animal. At one point in my life, I took a wildlife rehabilitation class, and in that class, I learned about raccoon roundworm. And I don't have time to talk about that right now. All I can tell you is you don't want it. And these guys kind of slipped down in my favorite animal list. But again, is this a problem? Isn't this a problem? It's really going to depend. And I'll get back to raccoons later. And then let's see if this works. All right, is this a problem or is this not a problem? Do you see the movement there? Problem or no? What do you think? So part of it is going to depend, so what is this? Here's a clue. This happened in the springtime. If I saw this in the fall, I would be much more concerned. But this happened in the springtime. These are ground bees. Ground bees. So these are solitary bees. She will lay an egg in a hole, and there'll be a lot of them because this is great habitat right here for them, but you don't have a whole hive that's protecting their resources. So can they sting? Yes. If you pick up a female, she will sting you. Don't pick up a female and you will be good to go. Now, if we saw this kind of swarming in the fall, that would indicate that they're yellow jackets. That's a completely different animal. That would be a very risky situation, and we would handle it accordingly. All right, what about this guy? Pest, yay or nay? Yes, it's a pest. So this again, it's obviously a wasp. Yes, it can sting you if it's a female. Males can't sting. This is another solitary wasp. So she's going to be, laying her eggs. She's out there pollinating. These are typically not going to be an issue. But this is our jump start into the stinging insects that absolutely are a human health risk. So this is where we get into those colony creating wasps, and Susanna talked a little bit about this, where you can get thousands of them at a time. They definitely have their place. They are mostly beneficial. They can go out and they can eat pest insects for us, but then they also have these cons. They've got incredibly painful stings, which some people are allergic to and can lead to anaphylactic shock and death, and that's a really big problem. So there's basically 3 different kinds that we're really concerned about. One is yellow jackets. These are the most common ones, and they're going to show up in different places. They've got a paper-like nest that we're going to see. They can also be below ground. And a lot of times people are going to figure out that they've got the ground nesting yellow jackets because they're doing some yard work or they mow in an area that they haven't been, and all of a sudden they all come out because they're protecting their hive, and then you end up with multiple stings and possibly a trip to the emergency room. So where is the risk if we're thinking about our backyards? So primarily for yellow jackets, we're going to have these paper wasp nests that we're going to be able to see, and that can be along the siding, on the porch, and in the protected areas, maybe up underneath the soffits, up closer to the roof. So you can see different areas here. And then of course we have those ground nesting ones. They are not digging their own holes. So they're going to be putting their nest into pre-existing holes, which might be a rodent nest. It might be so a place where you have a post where it is separated. So they're finding those voids and they're filling it with their nests. So this is my mother's house. So she calls me up and she has them, and they're coming in and out of the soffit area. And then this is her patch job because they actually broke through into her back bedroom. So that's a repair job. So for this situation, we called in the professionals because we're not dealing with this. And I would suggest that you do the same. So she actually had these yellow jackets that made it inside of her living space. All right, another one that we're concerned about is paper wasps. They also have a paper-like nest that they create, but they don't completely put them into an envelope. And so they're more exposed. They're a little bit easier to see. These guys, they look like they are ready to cut you. Don't mess with me, man. Again, where is the risk? They really need to have those sheltered places where they're going to put their nest, which can be very close to our homes. All right, bald-faced hornets. These are the real jerks. They're just really incredibly aggressive. They're bigger. The only time that I've been attacked by multiple stinging insects was these guys, so I have a particular aversion to them. These are the ones that when the fall comes and all the leaves fall off the trees and you see these beautiful nests high up in the trees, That's where these bald-faced hornets are going to be. So when we're thinking about the risks for them, if they're in the vegetation, is that one in the far left top tree a risk at all? Probably not, unless you have somebody that's deathly allergic to stings. I would leave them alone. But if you got lower branches right next to where people are in and out, that's probably something that needs to be addressed. So we're assessing the risk of each of these different pests. So what are we going to do about these stinging insects that are out there in what we've determined are risky areas? So first we can look for those potential wasp nest sites, and the best time to do this is late winter, very early spring, or in the fall after the first freeze, and go around and look for existing nests and just knock them off, so that when we come back later to do inspections, we're not going to have to figure out, is that an active nest? Is it one that is new? Because they're all off of the structures that we care about. All right, so then when we come back in the early spring and we start monitoring, what happens is that the female, the queen, comes out and she starts to build a nest. She'll lay some eggs. You've got just a few workers that are there. So we're talking about a handful of insects that's not very risky. We can go in, and here's Matt actually knocking off that very early nest. Something else, you can also use a hose in this situation, or even more fun, here's my permission for you to go out and get a super soaker to be able to just knock down these nests when they're at this incredibly small stage. It gets knocked down to the ground, you step on it, and then you just keep monitoring that situation to see whether they come back there. All right, so back to Mom's house. Obviously, she wasn't doing her inspection, and this pretty large nest shows up in what is obviously an incredibly risky situation, so that needs to be dealt with. What I did here was I borrowed a bee suit. I got a plastic bag, which I put underneath there, and then I took a pole and I knocked it into the bag. And I was shocked. I didn't even need the bee suit because I was able to completely encapsulate that nest. Now, if you were to do this, get the bee suit or hire somebody to do this for you. But it was incredibly easy to take care of this nest. And now we've reduced that risk. What other management options do we want to do? I mean, they are attracted to our garbage, to our compost areas, and other food sources. So we want to make sure that we're sealing up the garbages, that there's no holes, like the mice will sometimes chew a hole into the plastic garbage cans, get those sealed up. If you really have an issue with stinging insects within your compost pile, reconfigure that so that they can't get inside there. If it's an area you're seeing a lot of them, it's a high-risk area, you can do what Susanna did. Get out your lawn chairs with a glass of wine and just kind of watch where they're going back and forth to try to figure out where their nest is, and then see if that's something that you can do something about. If you see that they're going in and out of small burrows, I would wait until the first freeze and then fill that with sand so that it's unavailable. You don't have that void anymore the following year. And then if it's a large one, really the recommendation is to bring in a pest professional. And then after the first frost, we're going to seal up those openings. So again, they're not going to be able to come back the following year and fill those voids with their nest. All right, this is tricky. All right, and something else that you can do is Barb. So Barb, this is the answer for those areas you can't reach with your wasp spray. We're going to vacuum. And this works on structures as well. You get this set up, and as they're coming in and out of the nest, they get sucked up into the vacuum, and then they start releasing their alarm pheromones, so they cluster even more. You're not going to get all of them, but you can do significant damage to these nests to the point that we reduce that risk of getting stung from them. After you are done, you're going to leave this here for, how long did you leave this, Jody? Like 2 hours? Right. And boy, does that stink at the end of that period of time. But, you know, we're weighing options here, and bad smells versus taking care of a significant risk is pretty low. All right, and then again, after frost, we're going to go where we saw them coming in and out of places. We're going to find those areas, and then we're going to seal it up. And Matt provided the fantastic resource, which is the best material for these different voids that we have. All right, let's move on to mosquitoes. They're pollinators. I'm going to throw that out there, especially the males. Males do not suck blood, but they are pollinators. They also provide a food source, especially for my second favorite insect, which is dragonflies. My first is fireflies, but bats are not going to take care of your mosquito problem. I'm just going to throw that out there. But the dragonflies can help, or the mosquitoes are helping them by providing a food source. So obviously the cons of mosquitoes is that you've got these itchy bumps that you keep scratching, they can become infected. And also there is the mosquito-borne diseases that we need to worry about. All right, so there's a few species. There's like 70 species of mosquitoes within New York. Most of them are not going to bother with us. There are a few that we are very concerned about. They include species that are in the Aedes family, Culex family, and the Anopheles. So some of these are up and coming pests. So Aedes aegypti, which can spread Zika, dengue, chikungunya, and other viruses. It's very likely, right now they're in like mid New Jersey, where we think they're going to be. As far as I know, we have not had any in New York. Is that correct, Jody? Yeah. We expect that they will probably eventually get here, but it might be not in our lifetimes, which would be great. They are container feeders, and they prefer to feed on people. So they're really good at spreading diseases that affect us, because they're picking it up from infected people, and then when they meet other people, they're transferring it to them. Another one that is here in the more southern parts of the state is Aedes albopictus. This also breeds in very small containers, very small standing water areas. They feed on animals and people, so they are less risky than the Aedes aegypti, but still they can spread Zika, dengue, chikungunya, and other viruses that are out there. Ones that are more widespread throughout New York include ones that are in the Culex family. And this map shows the surveillance for West Nile virus, which is the orange blocks, and the circles are where they found positive mosquitoes, and the squares are where they actually had human cases of West Nile virus. The blue is Eastern equine encephalitis, or triple E, for those that are in the know. A lot less of it, but these are pretty significant diseases for people. So you can see this is spread out throughout the entire state. These are ones that feed at dusk, dawn, and night, when most people are thinking that mosquitoes will be out there. And again, they're going to feed in those very small pools of stagnant water. They also spread dog heartworm. And speaking of dog heartworm, Anopheles is another one. It's primarily risk. So we want to make sure we care about our fur babies. We want them to be safe. These tend to breed in more natural water bodies. And again, they feed at night and in the dawn. All right, so that's why they're a real problem. What are we going to do about it? So where is the risk? If we're talking about these small container mosquitoes, breeders, risks can include anywhere you have water collected. So if you leave a bucket out, there's standing water in there. This can include toys that are left out that shouldn't have these small spaces. There's no reason for that to be there, but often these toys will have that. Container gardens. If you have trees that are older and they have this space, for water to collect. This was in Matt's backyard, and there's actually mosquito larvae that's growing in there. Just a tarp that I played over to protect something. The water collected in there, got mosquito larvae. For me, my big thing besides the tarps is snow rakes. Leave them out upside down, they're collecting the water. Gutters that are unclean, they get clogged. So that's way up where you can't see. Great mosquito collecting areas. And then I went out yesterday and I was actually pretty pleased. I didn't find a lot of standing water on my property, but here's a garbage can that my husband had just picked up and we weren't using it. So he turned it upside down and it's collecting water. This is mosquito larva that is growing in my driveway because it doesn't stop raining. So this was actually a few years ago. Couple of days later, it finally dried up. So this didn't lead to adult mosquitoes because this happened, but because we saw this happen, we went in and we filled in these areas where the water was collecting so that that would not happen anymore. And we didn't have to risk getting mosquitoes out of our driveway. So what are we gonna do? With IPM, this is my favorite mosquito technique. So we've got a container that has the wigglers, the larvae that are in there. Dump it out and we're done. This is like my favorite types of, the only other type of IPM I like more is if don't do anything and you're going to be better off. Yes. So you want to make sure that so this doesn't continue on, so this completely drains. You do absolutely want to make sure that that happens, or you want to make sure that you're dumping it in a place where it's going to completely drain out. We did try an experiment last year. These are mosquito traps, and we thought we would give it a try. So we trialed this across the state. So because it's an experiment, we had the 3 buckets. All of them had water and straw that we put in to mimic the things that the larvae are going to feed on. So we had 1 bucket that was just water and straw. We had 1 bucket that was water, straw, and a BT mosquito dunk. And then we had another bucket that was the water, the straw, and then we added the mosquito dunk 2 weeks later. So this video should show. So you can see some wigglers in there. Here's the mosquito dunk that was added 2 weeks later. For these that are straight, they're dead. This is the way we like our mosquito larvae. And it didn't take very long for that newly introduced mosquito dunk to kill all of the larvae that was in this bucket. But even better, we found that when we added the mosquito dunk right at the beginning, that took care of the issue as well. So then you don't need to remember to put it in 2 weeks later. So bucket, water, straw, or leaves, mosquito dunk, you got a mosquito trap going on. Yes, and they also get very stinky. Yeah, the mosquito dunks will eventually run out. I just want to mention that fertilizer runoff does lead to more mosquitoes. So if you have a natural water body, you want to make extra sure for lots of reasons, but mosquitoes as well, not to allow the fertilizer to get into that. But this also includes your containers. So if you got a lot of standing water down here, you want to make sure you're not over fertilizing that pot. All right. You will have heard that there are plants that you can put in your yard that are going to keep away your mosquitoes and your ticks and your fill in the blank pests. It's not true. There is no evidence. There is no plant that is exuding enough essential oils to be able to keep these pests away. When they do the products made out of essential oils, they are concentrating it really strongly and then it goes out as a spray. your plant, there's nothing you can plant. So bearer of bad news, but save your money. If you like the plant, plant it, but not to keep away the mosquitoes. Please spread the word, because this keeps popping up where people keep saying that this is going to work. And for mosquitoes, really personal protection is the way to go. All right, which leads us into ticks. Speaking of personal protection, my favorite subject. So why are they a problem? There's a lot of information on this slide. The main thing that I want you to see is that we have 5 ticks in New York that are health risks to people. There's lots more ticks that we have that pose no risk to us at all. Each tick has its own host of diseases that they can spread. And if it is highlighted in yellow, that is 2024 information. We did not know before 2024 that Heartland virus and Bourbon virus were on Long Island. We did not know that Powassan virus, which we knew could be spread by the black-legged tick, can also be spread by the Lone Star tick, the American dog tick, and the longhorn tick. And then in 2025, we learned that not only the Lone Star tick, but also the black-legged tick can cause the alpha-gal allergy. And for those of you that don't know what that is, alpha-gal is a carbohydrate that is found in every mammal except for primates, and it's also found in tick spit. So when these ticks bites, they're like pumping thousands of different things into us, most of which we don't know what it does, but it can sensitize us to this alpha-gal carbohydrate, which means that if we're sensitized, the next time that we have a hamburger, we can have an allergic reaction, which can get worse with every exposure. And there are some people that even wearing a wool sweater or smelling the smoke from a barbecue will lead them into anaphylactic shock. So it's really a big deal. You don't want to get bit by a tick. Where is the risk in our yards when it comes to ticks? And the answer is, it depends on your yard. So let's look at a few yards. When I first started with this position, my first project was going to Westchester County, and I was analyzing whether or not mulch mowing would affect tick populations. And over the course of 4 years, we collected 63 ticks, which is not enough to answer my question, but I can tell you that I found ticks in the middle of high-end Westchester lawns. So there's really no place where you're completely safe from ticks. So this one here, Pachysandra beds. I will often find ticks in those areas. Humid, great mouse habitat. I will often find ticks there. This one is more obvious. We've got the woods here. That was where I was going to find most of the ticks, was right along that edge there. If you don't have that, it's less of a problem. But I was crisscrossing the lawn itself here, but in the woods and also along this weedy bed, I was able to find a number of ticks. This one up here, there was one day I was out here right in the middle of this lawn. I found a black-legged tick, and the owner happened to be there, and he was watching me, and he was so upset that I found this tick because he had had the yard sprayed the day before. 4 ticks. There's not enough residual with these tick control products to really make a difference. All right, so we need to figure out where in your yard are the hot spots. And we do this with a very technical device, which is basically a piece of flannel, yard by yard. We put a stick through it, and then we drag it along, and the ticks are there questing, and they're just waiting for something to brush by. They grab on, and because it's white, we can look at them and find them on the sheet pretty easily, and we can determine where the hot spots are in your particular yard. In a pinch, take a white t-shirt, stick a broomstick through it, patch some yard, just drag it across, see what you can find. And then when you see the areas that have ticks that are active, those are areas that we would want to try to change the environment so that it's sunny, it's dry. Black-legged ticks really want it to be 85% humidity. So if we dry it out, we get the sun in there, it's less likely that they're going to be a risky proposition. Trim up trees, remove branches, whatever we can do to allow the wind and the sunlight into those particular areas. This is a map often shown, showing the tick-safe zones. Really no such thing. But one of the things that came out of this is this mulch area that's put between the woods and the lawns. And some people got led to believe that the ticks would not cross this mulch barrier. I found plenty of ticks in mulch. What it does do is it says to us, hey, you're leaving a less risky area and going into a more tick risky area. Other recommendations here is to put fences around our gardens so that the animals aren't coming and dropping ticks along the way. Wood piles was brought up. We don't want these by our houses. They are nice condominiums, and where there are mice, there are going to be ticks. So move these kind of situations away from your house. And stone walls are also amazing, nice condominiums, and we can find ticks there as well. Other things that you can do is we can degrade the habitat. Multiple research has shown that if we have invasive plants, especially Japanese barberry, but also multiflora rose and honeysuckle, we are going to end up with more ticks that are infected with these tick-borne diseases. Not necessarily more ticks, but more infected ticks. The good news is when we go in and we get rid of those infestations, we're going to go from this many infected ticks back up to what it would have been in uninfested forests. So invasive plant management can be an important tool. And we also do not want to improve tick habitat. If we go in and we blow our leaves or we rake our leaves into the woodland edge, that has led to a 3-fold increase in black-legged tick nymphs the following spring, because we've created a fantastic shelter for them to last the winter. So do other things with your leaves. Have a compost pile right in the middle of your lawn in the sunny areas, so it's not tick areas, and you can make wonderful compost out of it. A project I really, really want to do is how does mulch mowing the leaves make a difference? Does it? We don't know. We can also look at tick management on the hosts themselves. So there's a do-it-yourself method here, which is the tick tube. So these basically look like toilet paper tubes filled with cotton, filled with permethrin. And the idea is that the mice that are nesting out there are going to gather the cotton and line their nest with it. So every time the mice come back to the nest, it's going to kill the ticks on the mice. And this has worked amazing in some research projects and not at all in other research projects. And part of that has to do with the composition of the mammals that are in your yard, and only you can figure that out. So you usually don't see the mice, but you might see the chipmunks. The ticks also really like chipmunks. Chipmunks aren't gathering the cotton, so I don't think you're going to see as good results if you have a lot of chipmunks as opposed to mice in your yard. But I think it's worth giving it a shot. See if it works in your particular area. And you can test whether it's working by taking that high-tech tick drag and seeing if your numbers fluctuate after you have started it. The other one, and this one you need to have a professional do it. These are tick boxes. The idea there is that there is a non-nutritive bait in there, so we don't want to increase the amount of rodents that we have, so we're not providing them with calories. But they come in for the food. They get squeezed with sponges that are treated with fipronil, and then we're killing the ticks directly there. So this can work for mice and for chipmunks. Here's the one area where we don't want to bring the ticks inside. The dogs will bring them inside. And research has shown that if you have a dog, you are 3 times more likely to have Lyme disease than non-dog owners. So make sure you talk to your veterinarian about how to protect these guys so that you're not exposing yourself to the ticks that caught a ride into the house on your dogs. You can also happen on you. So one of the recommendations that we have is to strip down and put all your clothes in the dryer. Ticks will survive the wash dry cycle. You put it straight into the dryer, get it to 120 degrees, all the ticks are dead, which is the way we like our ticks. And then you're naked, so you can do your tick check really well. All right, so back to the Swiss cheese. Think Swiss cheese to stop disease. Avoid enhancing habitat, reduce habitat, use repellents, exclude them from our bodies by wearing long clothing, or sealing up those areas where the stinging insects are nesting, using your inspections, and then species-specific management to deal with these different pest problems. And I just want to finish up with raccoons and raccoon roundworm. So I can't look at a sandbox now the same way because these turn into raccoon latrines. And that's how the roundworm gets spread, is through their poop. So if you have a sandbox, seal it up and prevent cats and especially raccoons from getting in there and pooping where your children are. Please, please protect the children. All of this and more is on our website, What's Bugging You? And of course, a lot of these subjects are covered in our monthly What's Bugging You First Friday events as well. Thank you very much for your time.